Alright, this is video 4 of 6, and things are going to get a little bit more complicated in this example. I have a radical on one side, 10x plus 9 underneath it, and then on the right hand side I have an x plus 3. So this is the first time that we've had a problem where we've had a radical on one side and then we have x on both sides. So when you go to solve this problem, you're going to do the same thing that we've been doing with our steps so far. Is you're going to isolate the radical or the rational exponent. We have a radical in this case, and then you're going to do the same thing. You're going to raise both sides to a power that will eliminate the radical. Now this, when we get rid of this radical, we're going to square both sides, and it turns out when we square this side, the whole entire thing with that x inside of there, we end up with a binomial. We need to take x plus 3 times x plus 3 on the right hand side. The left hand side, we've eliminated our radical and we get that 10x plus 9 out. This one has a little bit more algebra involved in solving. Got 10x plus 9 equals FOIL, right hand side, x squared, outside plus 3x, inside plus 3x, so I get plus 6x. And my last term is plus 9. Now, first time that this has happened, we've got a quadratic. We have an x squared term. When we go to solve a quadratic, when we see that this is a quadratic, we want to attempt to solve with factoring. If we can't use factoring, we'll do complete the square or quadratic formula, but the first step we're going to try to look at is to see if we can solve this by factoring. We need to set it equal to 0. So we want to move everything over to one side. So I'm going to move that 10x by subtracting it. And at the same time, I'm going to move that 9 by subtracting that 9. Now I have 0 on the left-hand side equals x squared minus 4x. The 9's cancel each other out, and there's no constant there. So when I go to solve this by factoring, I follow my steps to factoring. First question, is there a GCF? Yes, in this case there is a GCF. My GCF is x. I'm going to take x and pull it out, and I get x minus 4 on the inside. When I go to solve, I'm going to set my two factors equal to 0, x equal to 0, and x minus 4 equal to 0. So I get that the solutions for this quadratic right here are x equals 0 and x equals positive 4. Now when you get your answers, again, we've talked about this before, we need to check our answers and see if there's any extraneous solutions. Alright, so my two solutions were x equals 0 and x equals 4. At this point, I need to go ahead and check to make sure that these are both solutions. Again, the things we're looking for, we don't want to have something that's underneath a square root that's equal to a negative number. That can't happen. We also just want to make sure that we don't end up with a negative underneath a radical that has an even index. So if the index is 2, 4, 6, we don't want to have a negative underneath that radical. It's okay to have a negative under a radical for an odd index. So we go to plug in 0, and I get square root of 10 times 0, which is 0, plus 9 is equal to positive 3. When I plug in 0 for that x, I get 0 plus 3, giving me 3 on the right-hand side. So I get that the square root of 9 equals 3. That checks. Second check is going to be 10 times 4 plus 9 is going to be equal to 4 plus 3. When I check this one, I get that the square root of 49 is equal to 7, and that's a check as well. So this is one where we had two solutions and both of them were valid solutions. The next example that we go through, there's going to be two solutions, but they're not going to each check, so you'll get to see what happens when that happens. All right, proceed to the next video.